Y'all ready to talk week 8 DFS? We have a couple of fantasy contests going on this week, so let's get prepared for those by first kicking off with how we did last week. Quinten, you've joined us again, so let's jump right in.
Yeah, it was a wild week last week.
Yeah, last week. Okay, I steered us wrong. I'm going to just take responsibility for this. And I was saying no to that Falcons and Seahawks game. And I should have been in on the Seahawks, but I wasn't in on either side of it. And I misled us. And then Andy Dalton was just bad. And there was just a lot of bad last week.
It also just kind of felt like an example of the season. A lot of injuries. We saw really low scores from the wide receivers. There's only one wide receiver on Sunday that had over 20 points, which is the only time I can remember that happening. It felt like all of the touchdowns were going the running back's way. So you had these massive games from the running backs, but you could only play 3 max. Like even in this winning lineup, we can see they had a running back in their flex spot. And this week's kind of the project in the same way where I wish I could play 4 the receivers, but it's really just like shots in the dark trying to get your receivers out there.
It does. Yeah. It's crazy.
And 177 total for the winning lineup is low, right?
It is very low. Usually, I mean, we've seen 240 before, which is high, but usually I would say right around 200 is what you're shooting for. And to have a winning lineup at 177 is crazy. I would have never bought into this one. There was no way you were going to get me to go for Russell Wilson. I was just wrong on that game as well.
It is interesting in that winning lineup too, because the wide receivers I can think of that had pretty good games, like the star wide receivers, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, didn't have either of them. Just kind of had Pickens with the stack and then enough from McLaurin and Addison to get by.
Yeah, it's surprising he had McLaurin there with the injury to Jaden Daniels even doing anything.
All right. So do we just kind of take that week, put it behind us? And
yeah, I think we move on. That was a bad week. It's been our only losing week. So it's done. It's over with. We're moving on to week 8 and we hope for higher scores. We've got a lot of lopsided point spreads coming up this week. Let's jump in reviewing the games. Our first game is Green Bay at Jacksonville. And Green Bay is favored by 3.5 points and a 49-point total. I'm confused by this game. 49 seems really high for any game that Jacksonville is involved in. I can buy into Green Bay running away with it, but it's still only a 3.5 point spread. What's going on here? Anybody got an idea?
The only way it gets there is if Jacksonville's scoring some points in garbage time to hit that over. Because I see Green Bay rolling. Jacksonville's coming back from overseas, their vacation in England. And I really just want pieces on the Green Bay side. You could take a dart throw at Brian Thomas Jr. He's looked great. He's top 5 in wide receiving yards as a rookie. But he's about the only one that I'd be willing to invest in. Even though Tank Bigsby looked great, I think that was more of a result playing New England. But there were a bunch of options. The tough thing with Green Bay is just trying to find that right piece. They've got so many people that they spread the ball around to. So who's it going to be this week? Lauren, do you have any of your favorites on the Green Bay side?
Honestly, no. Just because it spreads out so thin, I can't, and I haven't been good at picking one and picking the right one. It seems like a carousel where I'm one off. So maybe whichever one I want to pick, don't pick that one.
I think I kind of lean just taking Jacobs, the running back's a heavy favorite, and getting out of there.
What about Tucker Kraft?
He's a good option, but I think, as we'll kind of bring up later, we've actually got we've got a deep pool of tight end options this week.
I think so. And I don't think Green Bay needs to use Tucker Kraft this week. I think it's a little bit easier going against Jacksonville and they can do kind of what they want to. I do like the Brian Thomas Jr. angle on there. I can't, it hurts me to go to Trevor Lawrence. So let's just move on because there are some other games I do like better than this one. And Jordan Love's expensive at 8,900. This would need to be a competitive game. And even though it kind of seems like Vegas thinks it might be, I'm not buying into that.
I think Jacobs has looked pretty good. I can see them getting out to an early lead and just kind of feeding him the ball until
Yeah,
it's over.
I can see that.
What do
So
we
are
got?
we doing any stacking from the next one then? The Philadelphia at Cincinnati?
This one's definitely interesting. You kind of have to pay up for the options. I would say these are probably your most expensive stacks on the slate with Hurts and Brown, or if you want to go Smith to replace them, save a little bit of money, and then Burrow, Chase, or Higgins. You've got 4 elite wide receiving options in this.
I like the Burrow and Chase. I definitely like the Burrow stacks a little bit better than the Eagles side of it because Jalen Hurts is 8,600, Joe Burrow's 7,700. We at least get to save a little bit because AJ Brown's 9,000 and Jamar Chase is 9,200. So you better save something somewhere, or you're not going to be able to build an entire team. You could go T Higgins, 7,500. I don't hate T Higgins as well.
Yeah, I think this
I
is just a
don't-
hard game to commit to.
Yeah,
Hard game to
I
go
don't
on.
like Philadelphia enough to spend the money there, I think.
It's been hard.
Yeah.
They've had, just the vibes around that team have not been good. I will say, was AJ Brown playing last week? I feel like their
Yes.
offense has been significantly better once Brown's on the field and kind of opened up the options. The Giants
I
didn't
agree.
press them too much to keep up a fight last week.
They didn't. And I think Joe Burrow can do a lot more than the Giants did last week. So we may see this be the game that gets out of hand. I do love Saquon Barkley as well. I mean, they showed last week, hey, we're just going to give you the ball and you can run with it. But at 9,100, he's expensive as well. That whole Eagles team is very pricey. And so when they're going really pricey like that, you have to know that that's the player that's going to score. And I have questions around that. Is it going to be Barkley, or is it going to be Jalen Hurts deciding to run this week? Or is he going to be passing the ball to AJ Brown? And I just don't feel like at those prices, that's something I'm willing to commit to.
Yeah,
I'm
this
looking for
doesn't feel like a stacking game just because the prices have to do so much at their
Yeah.
cost.
They do.
Are there any remaining parts that y'all like that we should stash away to maybe save some money and pick up?
I feel
We
like
could
since Higgins has been back, they've been targeting the tight end a little bit less. He's been kind of absorbing those targets. I think an interesting way to get away from what most people would be doing would be to involve the Cincinnati running backs. Take your shot with Chase Brown or Zach Moss just falling into the end zone a couple times. Because I think most people are going to lean on the wide receiving options.
I don't like Zach Moss. I'm going to leave it there. Let's move on. No Zach Moss. Zach Moss is my no Zach Moss this week. At least it's not Bijan Robinson, which we'll get here soon. I'm all in on Bijan this week. So let's.
Yeah, very different talent levels, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. So you'll let me just you don't have to talk me into Zach Moss, I don't think. Oh,
I won't push on that. Yeah.
So
All
should
right.
we chat Buffalo at Seattle?
Yes, we can go Buffalo at Seattle. So Bills by 3 in Seattle. Is this reflecting that DK Metcalf is probably out? Although the coach early this week said, we're just going to wait till Friday and see if his MCL sprain is better on Friday and decide if he can play. I don't think Metcalf plays in this, and I feel like this line's already reflecting that. But this is one of my favorite games, even without Metcalf. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the weaknesses of each other's defenses kind of match up well to get a high scoring game. Ken Walker has looked amazing this season, and he's just been dominant. We know against Buffalo's defense, you can run all over them. Seattle's been a little bit more pass heavy, but I kind of trust their offensive coordinator enough that I think they'll adapt, and I think Ken Walker will be involved in the passing game as well. So I really like him in this spot. And then Buffalo's just looked great. I think he'll be too expensive to pay up for, but if you want to get different in the field, could definitely make up his salary.
Yeah, he's 9,400, so that's going to be kind of painful pairing him up with somebody. You can pair him up with Keon Coleman and take that risk because Coleman's only 5,600. So what you're saving on Coleman kind of makes up for what you're getting on Josh Allen. I kind of like to flip this a little bit, and we'll assume that the Seahawks are playing from behind a little bit. Geno Smith's at 7,500, Tyler Lockett at 6,100, or you can go JSN at 6,400, either of those. And if you are looking for somebody to fill in and be really cheap, Jake Bobo, 4,300. I I feel like too with the Geno Smith and the Lockett or JSN stack, you could run that back with James Cook on the other side as well and have that running back. So this may be one of the we haven't seen one of those stacks where we get the quarterback and the wide receiver and running it back with the running back on the other side of the ball. I don't feel like this year.
Yeah. I think Cook would need to make sure Allen doesn't vulture his touchdowns, but I can definitely see a world where they can keep pace with each other and you get a good outcome from them. I think I'm staying away from the Buffalo catching options from Cooper and Coleman just until we kind of get a better idea of how involved is Cooper going to be. Even though he had a pretty good game last week, he only ran like 10 routes. So
Yeah.
I want a wide receiver that I'm paying over 7,000 for on the field consistently. I just don't know. He's still getting work in. So I'm kind of leaning away from those catching options in Buffalo.
I'm with you. The only one I can be talked into really is Keon Coleman. I felt like with Amari Cooper on the field, it opened things up for Coleman. And the Seahawks defense is pretty beat up. So Coleman, I could be persuaded into stacking with Josh Allen and saving that money as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go to Arizona and Miami. So Miami's favored by 3.5. They're at home. Over-under's 46. And I don't think I can trust the Dolphins.
You're not taking Tyreek Hill's own advice? Did you see in the interview, he told his fantasy managers, start him up to his back. I said in a press conference, but he is hard to trust. The one thing, I don't think we're ever going to see Tyreek Hill at 7,600 again.
We won't.
That's the lowest I can remember him. I mean, to get an idea of the wide receivers around him, he's in between Drake London and Devontae. So I like at that price. How can you not take a shot at Tyreek Hill? We know he can go for 150 and 2 and has that in his outcomes.
So how do you think everyone's going to be buying into this? Is he going to become chalk on the slate? And is everyone just sticking Tyreek Hill in there to try to get that? And I think he's a big wild card. After his 2 targets and 1 catch last week against the Colts, I know he didn't have Tua, but the quarterback could still pass and he didn't even throw it at him.
Yeah, he had that one deep pass. He wasn't even, it's like the Dolphins just gave up and said, we're going to wait 4 weeks and then we'll start trying again. But it's been 4 weeks. So fingers crossed. I do think he is going to be very chalky and going to be very heavily owned. There's lots of options with Miami if you want to get different. I mean, Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle are both very talented players. They're cheaper than they should be if we had Tua healthy all year. So more than happy to take a shot with them as well.
I do like the Devon Achane side of that at 6,800 or even the Raheem Mostert at 5,900. I think both of them are going to get plenty of play in this game. And I don't buy in to this is Tyreek Hill's 30-point game on the first game back for Tua. I just can't get there. I have lots of concerns over Tua. It doesn't get better than this matchup for him. The Arizona defense isn't great, and he's at home. So the matchup is really good for him. And on the other side of the ball, the Cardinals, they can score their own points as well. So I do like Kyler Murray. I like Marvin Harrison Jr. I like Trey McBride. I like that side being a viable stacking option as well. And they're cheaper. I guess they're about the same cost. Kyler Murray's at 7,800. I don't know what two is only 7,000. There are a lot of inexpensive parts in this game that we're probably going to have to play with if that's the way we go.
Yeah, I think if we had, been blind or just seen this matchup after first couple weeks and saw Arizona against Miami, we probably would have thought it would be like a 50-point over-under.
Yeah.
and these players would be a lot more expensive. So this is a game I'm willing to do a couple lineups and go all in on and have Tua, Tyreek, Achan, Harrison on the other side and just say this is the game.
Okay, we'll come back there. I'm still concerned over the whole Dolphins thing. I got bit last week. I thought last week they were going to actually try. That was really hard. I mean, even as a Colts fan, the Dolphins didn't even try. They were in it. It was a 3-point game. And why in the world with you're only down 3 points, aren't you even trying to get Tyreek Hill the ball? Trying to get him involved. You're not even
doing like
trying.
end arounds. I was kind of disappointed with their coaching.
It was
your playmakers the ball. I feel like McDaniels has looked great before, but yeah, like I was saying, it looked like that team just gave up. What do we got next?
Dallas at San Francisco.
Lauren, to start with, do you got to lean for who wins this? I think San Francisco's at home. They're a 4-point favorite, but they've been limping into these games. I feel like they might not have Devo. They might not have Kittle.
Yeah, and I know Dallas is coming off of their bye and everything, but Dallas has looked bad to me this year. So they're, in my mind, San Francisco, even limping along, is going to win. I mean, yeah, they're going to be figuring some stuff out, and maybe, I mean, they might have Mason, which will help them. And if they do have Mason, we saw what Kamara did earlier this year. So very possible to just run all over them again.
I don't think they've let anyone else do that other than Kamara, and Kamara hasn't had another game like that. So I'm just willing to just throw that out of my mind, and I'm not going to remember that game any longer because I followed down that path like way too many times this year of remembering that Kamara performance and, oh, the next one's going to do that too, and then it doesn't happen. 49ers are very concerning here because of all the players that are out, Ayuk out, then questionable and didn't practice on Wednesday was Deebo Samuel, who has a pneumonia. I don't think he's going to recover and play in time. George Kittle's got a foot injury. I'd bet George Kittle plays. Jordan Mason, ankle injury. Probably, I think I would lean on playing. Juwan Jennings, their wide receiver, hip injury. And Chris Conley, another wide receiver, has an ankle injury. So are you willing to take the chance on Ricky Pearsall here?
Personally,
I'll be honest and say I don't like any of the players from these two teams for a lineup for DFS. If I had to make decisions for sit start, that'd be different. But this is a game I'm just avoiding.
I'm kind of leaning that way too. I don't really like the 49ers options, even though they're cheap. I kind of think they're cheap for a reason. At the beginning of the year, they had all of these skill positions, Ayuk, Deebo, CMC, Kittle, and now they might be coming into this game with none of those options, and their offense just has not looked the same. You take out one of those guys, and they're still able to function, but they've just suffered so many injuries, and I think with the rest advantage, Dallas is going to get it done. I will say after their bye last year, Dallas kind of got their stuff together on offense and realized that maybe we should just target our best player 100 times a game and fed the ball to CeeDee Lamb. So I wonder if we're going to get more of the same after their bye week this year. And so I think that's the only reason why I'd be okay with potentially Dak CeeDee stack. But that would really just be doing something different than the field, taking shot. You are paying a lot for that stack.
It's pricey with CeeDee Lamb at 9,100.
It is. I like that stack. I like the Dallas side here, but this can be a game that we avoid if we want to. All right, let's move on to Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Don't think I'm allowed to make decisions on Atlanta anymore. Bijan's had 2 great games. Can it be 3? And then Tampa Bay had the rough week last week, losing Chris Godwin and Mike Evans until week 11. And we probably won't get another shootout like we had in week 5 out of this game again. I still like stacking this game. I mean, Baker Mayfield is still fun, but he's at $8,000. But if you're stacking him with Jalen McMillan at 4,900, you can definitely afford that stack. That's like one of the cheapest stacks that we've talked about. And I think Baker's going to be throwing the ball. Quinn, I think you said when we started that Bucky Irving was ruled out of this game, which puts a little bit more on Rashad White or Sean Tucker. So I like that as well. I like that Sean Tucker for a really cheap option at 5,500 to take a shot on as well.
Yeah, they set these prices before the Monday night game where we had Evans and Godwin go down. So you're getting the value on your other Tampa Bay options. I'm not going to lean on Baker, I don't think. I think that offense is definitely going to take a hit in their number two, losing their top two options. But there are some pieces that are interesting, and we've talked a lot about the expensive wide receivers, expensive running backs that we like on the slate. So these are good kind of puzzle pieces to work in that you're saving money. You know they're going to be out there a bunch and have the opportunity to succeed. I'm kind of leaning towards Rashad White just because his calling card is that he's been heavily involved in the passing game. I think Baker might get him even more involved in the passing game without the top two options. And with Bucky Irving not there to kind of steal the touches. I mean, Rashad White, I don't think has ever been that good of a strict running back, but he's a good wide receiver. And he's going to be on the field a bunch.
I agree. I also really love K. Dotton at tight end here.
Mm-hmm. He should be seeing a bunch of targets. I think he saw 10 targets last week.
We got to talk the Falcon side. You've got to like some of the Falcon options here. Can you go with a Cousins stack with London at that totals 15,000? So 7,100 and 7,900. Do you like that stack? Because I can see this game getting out of hand. I don't know.
I do like
they already did it once.
I do like London. I do like Pitts. He's been quietly pretty good for a tight end and just been getting it done the past 3 weeks as Kirk Cousins has gotten settled. I'm kind of leaning away from Bijan just because I like other running backs on this slate and think they'll be passing a little bit more. Everyone's been able to pass against Tampa Bay. So taking your shot on London, Mooney, or Pitts, I think are all good bets.
I think so too. Right. Let's move on to another one that's always difficult for me to discuss. Indianapolis at the Texans, and Houston's favored by 5, over-unders 45.5. We are expecting the return of Jonathan Taylor this week, and the Colts need him. Anthony Richardson looked really bad last week, but week 1, he played with a healthy Jonathan Taylor against the Texans, and that is the most fantasy points that the Texans have given up all season was to Anthony Richardson. So can we expect that to come into this game again? And do you like Richardson?
I like both quarterbacks in this game. I think Richardson is extremely risky, but he's been just so bad recently that I don't think a lot of people in the field will be taking him. So some way to get different and save some money. But Stroud has kind of, in his career so far, we don't have too many games on his career, but he's just bullied bad defenses. And especially every single game against the Colts, he's had a great game. I know as a Colts fan that it's frustrating. I think he's put up about 300 yards every single time he's played the Colts. And Stroud is a little bit expensive still. So Stroud's going to put up his 300 yards. I kind of lean more towards the wide receivers. Should be a good value. Tank Dell, I like in the spot at 6,900. And then taking your shot at Alec Pierce, catching 3 passes for his 120 and a touchdown.
Yeah. I like paying up for Joe Mixon at 9,000. They are loving Joe Mixon, and this could be a game where it's not all on Stroud, just like the last week, and we see Mixon have, yet another incredible game. So
Yeah,
I do like that
1,
option.
He had about 30 carries.
Yeah.
Had a couple touchdowns, so especially at home.
All good on going back there. So we could stack Anthony Richardson at 7,300 with Alec Pierce at 5,800, Joe Mixon at 9,000. We can even bring in Tank Dell at 6,900. And I got to tell you, so far that's probably my favorite. And I don't think I usually go in on Anthony Richardson.
I don't think Pittman or Downs are good plays. Like if Richardson's gonna hit, it's gonna be the deep passes. It's gonna be the long shots to Pierce and Mitchell that get him over 200 yards.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a bunch of games that I don't have a lot of interest in, so let's run through them pretty quickly. Tennessee at Detroit. Any interest in this one besides the Lions defense at 4,000?
Yeah, I think that's the only piece. Tennessee, the only pro of their team is they actually have a decent defense. So I don't think I'm willing to pay up for Detroit in that spot.
What about for Gibbs or Montgomery? Or are they too expensive or too much owned?
Yeah, I think they're too expensive. The only kind of savings that's available in the Detroit game is with Jamison Williams out. You can go Tim Patrick, and he won't be too owned, I don't think. So he's an option if you want to save some money. There's some good dart throws this week.
Baltimore at Cleveland? What do y'all think?
I'm remembering old Jameis Winston and hoping he can, chuck the ball downfield 50 times and has somebody to catch it down there. But I'm not really sure that that's what the Browns coach is going to want him to do. This could just turn into a really ugly divisional game. The Browns aren't going to run against the Ravens. Not too many run against the Ravens are good against the run. So this just isn't my favorite. I mean, you could stack Winston with Cedric Tillman and take a real long shot there, or
I
David
like
Njoku.
the sneaky stack of Jameis Winston and Njoku, and just they're cheaper. They don't have to do too much to pay off. And really, I think the only Baltimore Raven that could pay off their salary is Derrick Henry if they just keep feeding him the ball. I think they should run away with this game. And he's typically a lot better in wins.
Is the Ravens defense maybe worth picking up?
It's interesting, but I think they're one of the more expensive defenses on the slate. So I don't think I'm going to wind up with them too often in my lineups just because I'm going to spend my money elsewhere for defense.
5,200. They are expensive.
Should we move on to Chicago at Washington?
Yep.
Anyone in this game that y'all want to consider for lineups?
Not today on Thursday. The big mystery is will Jaden Daniels plays, and if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, this isn't much of a game in my opinion.
The Bears defense has been impressive to begin with, and if they're getting against Marcus Mariota, I like the Bears defense come through.
Yeah.
And the only other shot that's kind of stood out in this is you could take on DJ Moore. DJ Moore, Washington. I think he had 3 touchdowns in their last game against one another. And their secondary still can be beat over the top. So he's sitting at the 6,600 price line, kind of right in the middle. Most of the field is going to.
The problem with that is Keenan Allen wasn't there during that game.
That's true.
So now they have Keenan Allen back, and he seems to be getting a lot of the targets that were being spread around a little bit more.
Yeah. I haven't really seen their target share numbers, how DJ Moore has looked. I think he would be the only one that could have the ceiling to go off for a tournament play.
Are we looking at the Broncos defense in the Carolina at Denver with Bryce Young is back at quarterback now? I think
we got to. We got to at least glance and see if we have enough money saved at the end for it.
Yeah, I can't believe Bo Nix is a 9.5 point favorite. That's kind of telling you how bad the Carolina Panthers are. I don't know that it's really much of Bo Nix, although it's kind of interesting. He can scramble and he can run, Bo Nix. So we could see Bo Nix run for 3 touchdowns in this game.
I mean, Marcus Mariota just had a great game against this defense. And Bo Nix is at least the starter.
You could get really kind of crazy and go with a Bo Nix stack, I think, in this game, which would be kind of interesting for sure.
I do think
I don't know about stacking him. Maybe just take him.
Yeah, the reason I have a difficulty taking Bo Nix, I think he's actually a pretty good value at his cost, but I just love Javonte Williams in the spot. Home matchup, heavy favorite, which Denver will almost never be again. And he's looked great the past 3 weeks. So
I do like Javonte Williams. And at 6,000, he is quite the bargain. So we're going to have to fit him in, I think.
Not the week to pick up Chuba Hubbard, though.
No, I don't think so.
Back to the old Carolina days.
Yeah.
We had a couple fun weeks with Dalton. And now we're back.
We're back.
we're getting to the bottom of the barrel with these games here now with Kansas City at Las Vegas. Kansas City is 6-0, but I don't think Mahomes has been scoring a lot of fantasy points, so I don't know how many people you want to pick up here.
Yeah, Mahomes hasn't been over 17 this season, so and he's not going to need to win this game either.
I think I take the under in this game and move on.
Yeah,
I don't think
Chiefs defense. I could
Yeah.
definitely play the Chiefs defense, and of all the defenses that we've mentioned so far, this is the cheapest. So I do like that.
Brock Bowers is going to get a heavy workload, but he's expensive, and we've already kind of talked about a couple other options in Kadon and Njoku that we think are going to see a similar workload for much cheaper prices.
Yep.
Can I draft refs from this one? Make decisions on what the refs are going to do?
Get points for some penalty yards.
I don't know about that.
Right. And then I guess Jets at New England. Real quick. Anyone?
I do have my gym. I think my favorite play this week is from this game and Breece Hall. He's just too cheap for his salary. And Rodgers was specifically calling out the running game. Breece Hall is an amazing talent. And we just watched Tank Bigsby run over this defense. It looked like he was taking the linebackers 3 yards every carry, and Breece Hall has the speed to take it to the house if he gets an edge.
And he's 7,900. That's not too bad. We can do that.
No, he's cheaper than James Conner and some other running backs on the slates. I think he's mispriced and should be due for.
New Orleans at the Chargers. Anything here other than the defense and for the Chargers?
That's about it. You could take a shot at J.K. Dobbins and just say the Chargers roll at home, but there's other options I like, so I don't think I'm going to wind up with Dobbins in too many of my lineups.
Yeah.
Maybe the defense?
Defense is a good option.
Depending on what quarterback is starting?
I think they announced it's going to be Rattler, so for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Okay. Carr's still out then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's do a lineup.
Let's do it. Let's get in our $3 contest where the top 50% pay and see if we can do better than last week. So, Quinten, what are you feeling this week? I called last week, I think, and it didn't work out very well.
I think I've got 3 players that have kind of stood out to me whenever I was trying to make a lineup, and I'll let you guys pick those 3 where we start with. I like Breece Hall, Javonte, and Tyreek. I know you were kind of against Tyreek.
Yeah, I can go Breece Hall. Let's just go ahead and put in Breece Hall and Javonte Williams. I'm good with both of them.
And they're not too expensive, so we do have some flexibility later in the line.
And why are we starting with our running backs? Just because we feel really confident in those and
we do.
We like their price points?
Normally, that's not how I start the lineup. I kind of like starting with the stack, but those were, whenever I was building some lineups, I found myself taking them in every single one, so
they stood out.
Strong about them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
so our stack. Let's look at the quarterbacks and try to go from there. Everyone's like super expensive, so I'm trying to go down a little bit to see who I can find that is more affordable. It leads me to Anthony Richardson.
Down at 7,000 too.
What was that?
There's a quarterback down at 7,000 as well.
Tua.
You got Tua and Kirk Cousins down there on high functioning offenses, or Miami historically. I guess we got to go back to last year.
We do.
But I think Kirk Cousins is also too cheap for. I mean, this was his 500-yard performance just a couple weeks ago, and he's sitting there at 71.
Yeah, and then he threw 3 interceptions last week.
Yeah,
great. We're going to him. Cousins
We're
is
going
it.
back.
We're going back. We already decided Bijan wasn't it. I don't know. London?
Yeah, I like the pass catching options.
Or did you want Pitts? I don't really want to go both of them.
I like London.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go London. How about Kate Otten? Can we take him from this game?
Yeah. Great bring back.
I think this could be his week to be the top tight end.
All right. So what are we dealing with? We're at 6,400 average here.
And we've got Kirk Cousins for quarterback, Breece Hall for one of our running backs, Javonte Williams for our second running back, Drake London for our wide receiver, and now we got K. Dotton in our tight end. So
Let's
2
go
wide
look at-
receivers, a flex, and a defense.
Let's go look at defenses. Because I think this is a week that you want to pay up for a defense.
I think your popular ones are going to be the Broncos, the Chargers against backup caliber quarterbacks. You also have the Lions sitting there as well. They're at home against Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I just started at the bottom. I'm just kind of looking from the bottom up. And yeah, I think you do have to go up a little bit here
How
before you
expensive are
find something.
the Bears
The-
defense? Mariota.
So they're a little bit more expensive. So the Lions are going to be the cheapest one that we can play. Let's go with them for now and try to save and see who else we can pay for. So they're 4,000. We're going to pop them in, and we have a little more savings now. Now we're up to 7,300. And let's go look at wide receivers. Anyone you want to pay up for here? Are you
I
pretty
think
happy hanging in the
with-
7,000 range?
With the way we've kind of made the lineup so far, I'd be happy spending the money and paying up for one of the top options, either Chase, Lamb, or Brown. I think my lean for that would probably be towards Lamb, honestly.
That's
it's
who I was going to
expensive.
say. So
He
All right,
hasn't
we'll put
had
him
one
in.
of those dominant
he hasn't.
performances yet, and he's too good of a wide receiver to
Yeah.
keep that going.
But now we need to definitely look to save a bit here on somebody else. And we could save with Tank Dell. I like that. Or you have somebody, or Brian Thomas Jr., all people that wide receivers.
What about
that we've mentioned.
JSN or Lockett
Yeah, I like Jason's value.
at
6,400?
6,400?
What do we got left? 6,400, and we need a flex. Do you like playing running backs on FanDuel?
I think this week I do. One person that would fit well, if we're saying that the Atlanta Tampa Bay game is still going to be a high scoring game, it works out perfectly that we got 6,400 left for Rashad White.
It does work out perfectly. All right. Rashad White it is.
We take the signs.
So we've
there.
ended up with Kirk Cousins for quarterback, Breece Hall in running back, Javonte Williams for running back, Drake London and CeeDee Lamb and Jackson Smith-Njigba in wide receiver slots, K. Dotton as our tight end, Rashad White as our flex, and then the Lions defense. And that puts us at 0, right? Like we spent all our
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to enter that.
I do think this is a week for all your tournament lineups where you can really get out of the box. A lot of plays might seem very chalky, and like we talked about Tyreek Hill projecting really well and being cheap, but there's a lot of teams that I like to stack with this. So I think even your chalky plays might be lower roster percentage than normal. We've got no bye weeks, and there's a lot of different ways
there are a
this
lot of
slate could
different
go.
ways. Even though we have a lot of lopsided games by their point totals, I feel like there's a lot of potential here for some upsets or some more competitive games than Vegas actually thinks. And I'm going to have to go after the Indy-Houston game because it is one of my favorites this week. And since I never get to say that, I'm either going to be really frustrated or it'll work out well.
I do like that takes. Do you have any leans on any of the underdogs? Keep it at competitive. Maybe take that as your stack game.
Y'all both used the word chalky several times, and I don't think I know what y'all mean by that. Could you define what chalky means in this context?
So your chalk plays are what everyone else is going to do. It's already written on the board, and if you're getting away from it, then you got to erase it and put something else. It's something that's penciled in. If you just were trying to predict your highest projected points, that'll kind of be your chalk.
Okay, because there's chalk on the board. Got it.
Yep. Everyone's just putting that player into that slot. It happens also if there's somebody that's really cheap that if we ended up with a running back that was super inexpensive and he was going to get all of the carries, you would see that as the chalk. Right now, I feel like we're seeing a little bit more expensive players that everyone is counting on. But this week, is unique in that we have a full slate of games, and there are a lot of really expensive players in a lot of games.
Should be fun. Hopefully we can actually stay clear of the injury bug this week and
Yeah.
get some wide receivers over 20 points.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think that's it then for us for today. Thanks for tuning in this week. We have sparked some great ideas for y'all. I have some of my own ideas. I'm excited to go do my own lineups because I definitely differ from Quinten and Judy on some of these topics, like the CD Lamb option. But we've got our free contest going this week, so I got to go put my own lineup together. You can find the links for the free contest in the description or at fangirlfootball.com. We'd love to have y'all join us and pick who you think's going to be the top lineup this week.